The air on the Hungarian plain is thick with smoke and the screams of dying men. Arrows fall like black rain, obscuring the April sun. Heavily armored European knights, the pride of Christendom, charge with lances and prayers, expecting to smash through the lines of their strange, leather-clad opponents. But the lines do not break. Instead, they melt away like ghosts on horseback, drawing the knights deeper into a bewildering storm of horse archers who fire with terrifying speed and precision. At stake in this swirling chaos is not just a kingdom, but the entire future of Western civilization. For months, panicked rumors have spread of a demonic horde from the unknown East, an army that moves faster than any before it, razing cities and slaughtering armies with an efficiency that seems almost supernatural. If this Christian army, one of the largest ever assembled in Eastern Europe, is defeated here on the banks of the Sajo River, there will be nothing standing between this new terror and the heart of Europe. At the center of this desperate defense is King Bela IV of Hungary. He watches from his fortified camp as his best knights are lured into a trap. He is a ruler of a proud and ancient kingdom, a man who believed his stone castles and chivalric traditions made him invincible. Now he sees his world being systematically dismantled by an enemy whose tactics are utterly alien, whose motives are a complete mystery, and whose numbers seem endless. His entire reality is being unwritten before his eyes. How could this be happening? Who were these invaders, these Tatars or Tartars, as the terrified Europeans called them, who seemed to have emerged from the gates of hell itself? And could this desperate final stand by the combined forces of Hungary possibly turn the tide against an enemy that had already crushed every army in its path? The fate of a continent waited for the answer, holding its breath in a cloud of dust and smoke. The answer was a brutal, unequivocal no. The invaders were the Mongols, the most sophisticated and disciplined military force on the planet, and this was the Battle of Mohi in 1241. The Hungarian army was not just defeated, it was annihilated in one of the most masterful tactical victories in history. King Bela IV would flee for his life, his kingdom shattered. The Mongols had kicked open the door to Europe, and the West was utterly, terrifyingly unprepared for what was about to come through. History is not a gentle stream, it is a series of violent collisions, moments where one world smashes into another. The Mongol invasion of Europe was one of the most violent collisions of all, a moment where the West stared into the abyss and saw a reflection of its own fragility, forever changing its perception of the world and its place within it. The conquest of Europe was no longer a question of if, but when. The story of this cataclysm begins decades earlier, on the vast, windswept steppes of Mongolia, with the rise of a single, unifying leader, Genghis Khan. He had forged the scattered, warring Mongol tribes into a singular, unstoppable engine of conquest, fueled by discipline, loyalty, and a revolutionary military system. His vision was not limited to the steppe. He believed he had a divine mandate from the eternal blue sky to conquer the entire world. After Genghis Khan's death, his son Ögedei inherited the mantle of Great Khan and the mission of world conquest. In 1235, at a grand council known as a Subutai, Ögedei and his advisors made a fateful decision. They would launch a massive invasion into the unknown lands of the West. The goal was nothing less than the subjugation of Europe and the extension of the Mongol Empire to the shores of the Great Sea, the Atlantic Ocean. Command of this monumental undertaking was given to Batu Khan, a grandson of Genghis, but the true architect of the invasion was a man whose name should be remembered alongside Alexander and Caesar, Subutai. He was Genghis Khan's most trusted general, a military genius who had campaigned from China to Persia. Subutai was now an old man, but his mind was a razor-sharp weapon. He planned the invasion of Europe with the precision of a chess master. For years before the main invasion, Mongol spies had fanned out across Europe, posing as merchants and envoys. They gathered intelligence on the political divisions, the military strengths, and the geography of the European kingdoms. Subutai knew about the bitter rivalries between the Pope and the Holy Roman Emperor, and the feuds among the Polish and Hungarian nobility. He would not be invading blind, he would be exploiting a continent that was already at war with itself. The first storm broke over the principalities of the Kievan Rus. In the winter of 1237, a massive Mongol army, hundreds of thousands strong, crossed the frozen Volga River. The Russian princes, divided by petty squabbles, were unable to mount a unified defense. The Mongols swept through their lands in a blitzkrieg of shocking speed and brutality, a whirlwind of fire and steel. City after city fell. The great centers of Russian culture and power, such as Ryazan and Vladimir, were besieged and utterly destroyed. The Mongols brought with them sophisticated siege engineers from China and Persia, capable of bringing down the mightiest walls. In 1240, the mother of all Rus cities, the magnificent Kiev, was reduced to a smoldering ruin, its inhabitants slaughtered. The gateway to Europe had been smashed. With the Rus subjugated, Subutai unleashed his master plan in the winter of 1241. He divided his forces into 3 armies. The main force under his and Batu's command would drive into the heart of Hungary. A smaller force would protect their southern flank in Romania. The Third Army, under the command of Baydar and Kadin, both grandsons of Genghis Khan, was sent north with a terrifying objective: to act as a diversion by destroying the Kingdom of Poland and any German allies who dared to intervene. The Northern Army descended on Poland like a pack of wolves. They moved with bewildering speed, sacking Sandomierz and advancing on the capital, Krakow. The Polish nobility, though brave, were tactically outmaneuvered at every turn. The Mongols used feigned retreats to lure the heavily armored but slow-moving Polish knights into ambushes, where they would be pincushioned by horse archers. The Polish Duke Henry the Pious of Silesia managed to assemble a large coalition army near the city of Legnica. His forces included his own Polish knights, miners from the town of Goldberg, Bavarian crossbowmen, and a contingent of the elite, fanatical Knights Templar and Teutonic Knights. It was a formidable European force, confident in their heavy armor and their faith. They were marching towards their own annihilation. The Battle of Legnica, fought on April 9, 1241, was a tactical masterpiece of deception. The Mongols used smoke bombs to obscure the battlefield and create confusion. They once again employed their classic feigned retreat, luring Duke Henry and his elite knights away from their infantry. Once separated, the knights were surrounded and systematically destroyed. The European army was wiped out, and Duke Henry's head was paraded on a spear. The Mongols then turned their attention south towards their primary objective, the Kingdom of Hungary. King Bela IV had received warnings of the approaching storm, but his own arrogant nobles, resentful of his power, were slow to respond. They scoffed at the threat of a rabble of nomads, believing their stone castles and heavy cavalry were insurmountable. They could not have been more wrong. As Batu Khan's main army advanced, King Bela IV finally managed to gather a massive force and march to meet them. He set up a heavily fortified camp on the western bank of the Sajo River, near the plain of Mo. He felt secure, believing the muddy, difficult river would protect him from a direct assault. He was playing by the rules of European warfare. Subutai was playing a different game entirely. On the night of April 10th, Subutai sent a detachment to cross the river to the south by a hidden stone bridge under the cover of darkness. At dawn, the main Mongol force began an assault on the main bridge, using catapults to bombard the Hungarian crossbowmen defending it. This was the bait. As the Hungarians focused all their attention on the bridge, Subutai's flanking force emerged from the morning mist and stormed the rear of their camp. Panic erupted within the Hungarian lines. Trapped and attacked from 2 directions, the army completely disintegrated. The Mongols deliberately left a gap in their encirclement, a seeming escape route. As the terrified Hungarian soldiers fled through this gap, they entered a prepared killing ground. For 2 days, the Mongol light cavalry hunted down and slaughtered the fleeing remnants of the army. It was a complete and total catastrophe. The aftermath of Legnica and Mohi was a vision of the apocalypse for Eastern Europe. With no armies left to defend them, Poland and Hungary were laid bare. The Mongols swept across the land, systematically destroying towns and villages. The grand cities of Pest and Buda were captured and burned. For the next year, the Devil's Horsemen engaged in a campaign of terror, designed to break the will of the people and ensure the land could never rise against them again. News of the disaster spread slowly, then all at once, across the rest of Europe. The accounts were so horrific they were scarcely believable. Refugees told stories of a short, squat, merciless enemy who lived on horseback and worshipped demons. Pope Gregory IX, in a state of panic, tried to call for a new crusade, not to the Holy Land, but to defend Germany and Italy from this new, existential threat. The Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II was a brilliant but cynical ruler, locked in a bitter political struggle with the Pope. While he recognized the Mongol threat, he was just as wary of the papacy using the crisis to gain power over him. The rulers of Western Europe were paralyzed by their own internal conflicts, completely incapable of mounting the unified continental defense that was desperately needed. By the winter of 1241, Mongol scouting parties were raiding the outskirts of Vienna and pressing against the borders of the Holy Roman Empire. Subutai was laying his plans for the invasion of Austria, Italy, and the German states for the following spring. There was no military force in their path capable of stopping them. The conquest of the West seemed not only possible but imminent. And then, just as they stood on the precipice of total victory, the Mongols vanished. In the early months of 1242, the entire Mongol force from Austria to Poland packed up their camps, turned their horses east, and simply rode away. To the bewildered and terrified Europeans, it was a miracle, an act of divine intervention. They had been spared from Armageddon, but they had no idea why. The reason for their salvation lay not on a European battlefield, but thousands of miles away in the Mongol capital of Karakorum. In December 1241, the great Khan Ögedei had died, supposedly in a drunken stupor. According to Mongol law and tradition, following the death of the great Khan, all princes of the royal bloodline, including Badu Khan, had to return to the capital to participate in the Kurultai to elect a successor. This political imperative trumped all other concerns, even the conquest of a continent. Subutai, the architect of the invasion, argued fiercely to stay and finish the campaign, but the law was absolute. The princes had to return to jockey for power and ensure their own political futures. The invasion of Europe was not defeated, it was postponed. The continent was not saved by a great victory, but by a timely death. This single contingent event raises one of the most tantalizing what-ifs in all of history. What if Ögedei Khan had not died? What if he had lived for another 5 or 10 years? Subutai's plans were already in motion. A fragmented and feudal Europe with its slow-moving, heavily armored armies would have stood little chance against the unified command, speed, and tactical brilliance of the Mongol war machine. The great cities of Paris, Rome, and Venice could very well have suffered the same fate as Kiev and Buda. The course of Western civilization, the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, the Age of Discovery, might have been snuffed out before it ever began. The world we know today was preserved not by its own strength, but by a stroke of sheer, dumb luck. Though the main invasion never resumed, the impact on Europe was profound and lasting. For the Russian principalities, it was the beginning of the 250-year Tatar yoke, a period of Mongol domination that would isolate Russia from the West and shape its political development for centuries. For Hungary, the demographic devastation was catastrophic, with some estimates suggesting it lost up to half its population. But the invasion also shattered Europe's sense of isolation and superiority. For the first time, it became terrifyingly aware of the vast, powerful civilizations that existed to the east. The event spurred a new era of contact, inspiring missions like that of Giovanni di Pian del Carpine and later, the travels of Marco Polo. The terror gave way to a grudging curiosity, and the world suddenly seemed much larger. The Mongol storm eventually receded, breaking apart into separate khanates. The immediate threat to Europe passed. But the memory of that terrifying year, when the apocalypse seemed to arrive on horseback, was burned into the collective consciousness of the West. It was a brutal lesson in the fragility of civilization and the unpredictable nature of history. We often view history as a grand, inevitable march of progress. But the story of the Mongol invasion of Europe reveals a different truth. It shows us that history is a chaotic and fragile thing, a narrative that can be completely rewritten by a single battle, a brilliant strategy, or the unforeseen death of a single man thousands of miles away. The world we inhabit is not the result of destiny, but of 1,000 such moments where everything hung precariously in the balance.